Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Spiritual Infinity. And of course, my name is Zenzi Sewa, and I'm here laughing because I've got my guest, Howard Eisenberg, who I've had on before. And I said to him, "You're going to be my resident guest. You're going to come back every now and then," because he's written a very good book. It's called Dream It to Do It. And the way he's done the chapters about our consciousness and spirituality is very relevant, as all of our members and all of my guests when they're writing their books. But as I keep on saying, we're living in a time of the awakening, and there's a lot going on. And a lot of people are now beginning to question things, especially since 2021. And we're feeling things, we can be confused, and information around us is not necessarily true. And it is a time when we need to start going within, because everything is within us. And this is where my platform comes in. I'm with my guests, and I'm constantly saying we're spiritual beings with a physical body having a human experience, and we need to awaken the power that's within us and that governs everything around us. And so my guests are bringing their journey of spirituality, how they connected. And in Howard's case, well, he spoke about his journey last time and about his book and what he's put in. And I thought, well, let's go through things step by step, because it will help us all to understand and help us through our own journey. So today, Howard is going to talk about a particular subject, which he does cover in his book, but I've asked him to, talk about it and go into it probably a bit more depth and give us a wider understanding. And it's brain science and consciousness. And it is very much, some of us, we can feel things. And it's also bringing out that science is now coming to agree on certain things that are going on within the human body and being and psyche. But spiritual man has been saying this for hundreds of years. But some of us need to wait until science proves it. And science is now coming out with it. So without much ado, I'm going to hand you over to Howard, and he's going to talk on that subject. Howard, welcome.
Thank you, Lindsay. Glad to be here again. Thank you for the opportunity.
And can you just remind us, where are you speaking from?
I'm speaking in Canada, in the woods, north of Toronto.
And I'm speaking in London.
I know.
Through my window at the weather. But we're here. So Howard, thank you so much for coming back. And I am looking forward to listening to you. So I'm going to sit back and enjoy. So Howard, take it away.
You're welcome. I'll try and give you an overview and include some other material from other sections of the book. But I also invite, as I go along, your questions of things that might come up for you. I don't want it to just be a lecture, so to speak.
Yeah.
I enjoy the interaction with you. But broadly speaking, most people have been taught to believe, and do believe, at least in the Western world, if you like the Western scientifically informed world, that it's obvious that the organ we call the brain in our heads, within our skull, is the source of what we call our mind, our sense of self, our consciousness. And there are amazing discoveries that have been going on in the last couple of decades, in particular, in brain science, in terms of being able to understand the activity of different sections of the brain and why they have specialized functions, and the effect of certain things on the brain, such as even psychedelic chemicals, now that the research has opened up somewhat. And then there are also forms electrically, devices, externally, that affect the brain function and are being explored for things like psychiatric application. So it's an exciting time in terms of things we discovered about the brain. But here's the kicker. There is no proof whatsoever that the brain in our head is the source of our consciousness, of our mind. None. There is not even a generally accepted scientific theory that can even suggest a hypothesis, a theory of how the physical, immaterial brain can generate, give rise to our subjective experience of consciousness. That's heavy. And yet, most people, I repeat, make this assumption, and it's just assumed. It's like being politically correct, even in the scientific community. They have their own entrapments. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, I'm going, as you said, this is nice interacting. Now, I find that very, very interesting, and I know those looking, because we have been led to believe that our brain stores everything and it's what brings forward and it's part of our consciousness and this part and that part. And so now you're saying this is what we've been told, but actually the truth is they don't really know.
They don't really know, and keeping this first on the level of, how should I say, more conventional knowledge,
Yes.
and it's scientifically based, that
Yeah.
again, many people
Yes.
are not aware of, but is proven
Mhm.
by working, our understanding of things.
Well,
So not only, again, is the belief weak that the head brain is responsible for our consciousness, because there's no direct proof for it. We only have what we call correlational evidence. If someone has an accident or a stroke, there's an impairment sometimes of their awareness and consciousness, and that is taken as a sort of a proof. It's no proof. If something happens to your computer, it doesn't mean the internet dies, right? If something happens to your television, it doesn't mean that that signal is not being broadcast anymore to everybody else all over the world, and if you had another receiver, you can still hear it. So all it suggests, if anything, and we can get into this more, so maybe it's a receiver of consciousness, not the source, receiver. Now, before we go into that deeper level, let me come back to some of the more familiar scientific
now
level.
you're saying it's the receiver, which I can thoroughly understand, and we are the receiver,
so to speak. But we're more than just the receiver, though. But
well, yes.
we'll unpack that later if you want to come back to it. So, again, staying with somewhat conventional Western science, even though it may not be broadly known. Arguably, if we want to play with the theory, at first on the assumption that the physical brain in our body generates our mind, our conscious, our awareness, then arguably there's not one brain. We all have three physical brains. There's a heart brain, and there's also what we call gut brain, or the microbiome. Let's go back to the heart.
Yes.
Many so-called primitive cultures
Yes.
actually believe that the center of their awareness, of consciousness, is the heart.
Yes.
Goes back a long, long time in
Yes.
history.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at it scientifically.
Yeah.
We now know that the heart, the human heart, for everybody, has its own nervous system. It has neurons, brain cells, like the ones in the head brain. It has its own memory system. It has more brain nerves going to affect and control, modify the head brain, and the head brain has nerves that can modify the heart brain physically.
Oh,
In other words, it's more heart over head rather than head over heart.
yes.
The heart can also secrete hormones like oxytocin. That's the love hormone, the bonding hormone.
Yes.
In terms of memory, we know from cardiac transplant patients when people have had heart transplants, and usually there's a total concealment for various reasons of anything about the identity of the donor beyond the heart's okay, healthy. But a number of times the people who have received these heart transplants It's reputed now in dozens and dozens of surgical and medical journals have spontaneously showed personality changes. Suddenly they wanted to dress a different way. Suddenly their dietary changed, preferences changed. Suddenly their athletic interests changed and perhaps abilities. And somehow it was found out those were the characteristics of the person's heart they now had, which they had no way of knowing. So again, it also transfers memory.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Just to reiterate. So what you said that people who have had heart surgery or changed heart
Transplants.
it has been proven and shown that when they've had this heart transplant, characteristics of them have changed. Their likes, dislikes, the way they do things. And what you're saying is that their previous heart was probably lacking those things that the present heart that they have now.
No, they've got characteristics in the transplanted heart from the person whose body was in.
Thank you. So
a different person.
Yes,
with a different memory.
Yes, so you're saying whoever's heart they've now got, the characteristics of that person is now transferred to them, which would then make sense why they've changed the things they like and do. And that's scientifically been shown.
Yes, and many of the surgical and medical journals now are reporting this. They have for decades.
Yeah.
It's been going on for some time.
Oh,
so we know that.
Gosh.
So again, the heart, come back to it. Some of the more interesting research, which I get into in my book, quite a bit more spirituality and the work of parapsychology, psychic phenomena. Research has shown at places like the Institute of Heart Math, California, that the heart is able sometimes to be aware of things, detect things, respond electrically before certain things have even happened that are going to happen. In other words, when we talk about things like having a premonition, a gut feeling, what we call parapsychology precognition,
yes,
there's some evidence that the heart may be the center for that. And in fact, at least in heart math, they actually think the heart might be a portal to source. That's where our intuition comes from, when you open your heart. So now we dealt with two of the brains, right? and we've shown that not only is the first one, the head brain, but assuming a brain, there's no, as I told you, evidence or theory to explain illustration of consciousness. And now we've shown there's also another physical brain that we all have, which is even in some ways much more powerful and important than the one up there. Now there's another brain. We all have it. It's called sometimes the gut brain or the microbiome. And that refers to trillions of micro bacteria, fungi, viruses that just routinely inhabit our large mouth, the large colon. And there are more collectively DNA information in those microbiome, those microorganisms, than the entire human body. So within us, so to speak, including our microbiome, most of us is not us. It's the microbes, the bacteria, the fungus, the viruses, and things we haven't even labeled and discovered yet. Now, it gets more dramatic. Those bacteria, which we often think are really bad things, get rid of bacteria, they also can greatly affect and modify our whole immune system, strange enough to protect us from bad germs out in the world, and more. Those bacteria are also able, just as I said, the heart is able to secrete a hormone, oxytocin. The bacteria in our gut are also able to manufacture and secrete serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter for the head brain. The most popular class of drugs right now in psychiatry are the SSRIs, starting with Prozac and many of their versions since then. And all those things, SSRIs mean is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. The simple English means it's sort of as a way of someone increasing the serotonin in your brain with this drug. But 90% of the serotonin in our body is produced in our gut, in our microbiome, not in our head brain. And so by modifying your diet, and one of the healthiest diets we know currently is a so-called Mediterranean diet, it's a natural way of you getting yourself into a better balance of your mood, your emotional state, in terms of anxiety, depression, or anger. Now, we haven't gotten to the deep part yet.
No. You you saw me about 2 minutes ago laughing and go. This is why I brought Howard on again, and he's coming again. And I said at the beginning that men of spirit or people of spirit, many hundreds of years have been saying things. And now man of science is saying, oh, well, yes. Now, Howard said, you said something about the heart. And I've been saying, I've said it when I've done my short podcasts, my short talks and things. And I've said the heart is the first organ to be created when a baby is being formed. Am I correct?
My memory's not quite that good, so I think you're right, but I'm not totally sure on that one.
But spiritually, from a spiritual point of view,
mm-hmm.
It is known and we believe that it is from the heart that we're connected to the creator, which is source. And you just said that today. Science is now saying, look, and man of spirit has been saying this all along. Now, we also know from source that we're created from love, unconditional love. Where that is from, where's in our body, is the heart. It's the basis of our creation. And therefore, and I'm laughing, I'm saying, man of spirit has been saying this for hundreds of thousands of years. Man of science is now catching up. And I'm so glad I brought you back, Howard, because now I understand that there are 3 points of energy within us: the brain, the heart, and the gut. And from a nutritional point of view, it's been said, everything, when you become imbalanced, starts from the gut. And so here is Howard now telling us 3 parts, and it's coming out what man of spirit has been saying. Howard, continue, please.
So everything I share with you is science-based, leading edge science-based. That doesn't mean, however, that most scientists are even aware of this or are comfortable acknowledging such thing. Many are invested in their way of seeing the world, just like in politics, we see divisiveness, and in religion, even more so in the world. Even the scientific community. We'd like to think scientists of anyone would be the objective ones. Arguably, quite not. So back to the relationship to the brain as a receiver, potentially, going back to the head brain for a moment, just to simplify this discussion. And if it's a receiver, it would make sense if you modified physically, which we can do with drugs, for cerebral accidents or natural things like, for some people, strokes and tumors and so on, that change some of the physicality of the brain. It would make sense there'd be some change in people's awareness and ability to move about. But again, that wouldn't prove that's the source. As I said, if you had a radio and suddenly accidentally you dropped it or spilled some water on it or something, and it wouldn't work anymore, it wouldn't mean that the signal being broadcast that you were listening to has also stopped. Just your receiver. If you got another receiver, and some people have more than one, then you could tune into it and still hear it.
Yes.
So the correlation evidence just suggests, again, there's some relationship, but not that it's the cause, the source. What we think when we look more broadly, when people in everyday life, and I mean everyday life, from all over the world, on occasion report experiences of being able to be aware of something or accomplishing something that they could not give any possible rational explanation for. Things like, for example, a mother awakening in the middle of the night, suddenly in distress, that something's wrong with her child in some remote part of the world, and finding out later on, a few hours later, whatever, that indeed, perhaps they passed away or they were severely injured, things of that nature. Um, and people too having a foreboding sometimes that bad things are going to happen in the future. And indeed, it transpires. It becomes about as such. So from all of recorded history and all over the world, people have had these experiences which, again, cannot be explained by conventional materialistic science. And of course, consciousness itself, as I said, isn't really explained. All we can do, or repeat, is become more aware of its capacities, the way it manifests itself. But to actually understand it, to control it, as a other, realm. So back to the relationship of consciousness and source. So one of my chapters is also entitled "The Only Thing You Can Absolutely Know." When we are in a dream, we don't always know it until we awaken. And therefore, it's possible even right now that we're all, having this conversation and listening in, that this isn't real. It's just a dream. This is a very strange conversation. These are very strange, mind-boggling concepts. Maybe it's just a dream. Maybe it's not real. And the point is, it could be a dream, because sometimes we don't know. And also other things. Sometimes it's a severe accident, and they're in a coma, and they still may having experiences in their mind, but they're no longer in touch with the ordinary physical world they're normally involved in. So it's possible that our awareness, even though we're aware, may be distorted in some way. We may not be seeing or understanding things clearly. But we can't doubt that at least we're aware. So again, what we're aware of, what we believe, may be wrong for various reasons, even like this. But one thing we can't doubt is that we're aware. And you made a reference, before too, correctly. Unfortunately, these days, there's so much false, distorted news out there. It's so hard to know what is real. When you go into yourself, into your source, you can see through things almost transparently and understand in a different way what benefits, what serves, and what goes in the other direction. It's possible to learn by various ways to actually diminish the functioning of the head brain safely. That can be done by things like hypnosis, properly administered psychedelic research, which they're conducting now, these research trials at various universities. Various forms of meditation practice, and the main forms. A technique to learn to work with your dreams, I call it lucid dreaming, which I describe in my book. And it's being able to learn to control your dreams while you're dreaming them. So we know there are ways to modify the brain function and its relationship to what you experience as consciousness. But in most cases, what we're doing, strange enough, is we're kind of removing the involvement of the activity in the head brain. So, for example, we know from various ways of measuring brain function, physical brain function, that when people are given psychedelics, you might expect there be a frenzy of brain activity, like hyperexcitement. It's the opposite. It quiets down, and it becomes more sort of almost parts of the brain become more disconnected from other parts and rearrange in new patterns. It also promotes something called neuroplasticity, which stimulates the growth of new nerve cells and new connections, like a rewiring of the brain.
Yes.
So, but this is happening, it's like mind over matter. Again, the conventional assumption is the physical brain is a consciousness. But here we find by altering consciousness, we can alter the structure of the brain. The same is found in meditation. When people go into meditation, it affects we call it the expression of the genes, the genetic structure of the physical brain. So it modifies how they function, sort of like the on-off switches, which are more active, which are more predominant, just from meditation. So it's not, again, physical brain producing immaterial consciousness. It's immaterial consciousness controlling and remodeling physical brain.
Okay.
Now, coming back to the relationship, we have to source. As you partly said, putting to the Shaga. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yes.
And to unpack that, as I understand it now, probably. So we mentioned a few times the notion of source. And in some ways, the word itself is self-explanatory. The source is from where everything comes, so to speak. The source of all. The source of all.
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah. And what I show in the research in my book, Dream to Do, is that increasingly evidence shows that the fundamental nature of the reality, not just about the brain not being producing consciousness, more and more the research is showing the fundamental nature of reality is that it's not material, it's not physical, it's not separate out there and independently existing. So there's much about science again, which still has it all wrong. Whether it's the relation of brain and consciousness, whether it's the relationship in terms of physics to the things they study and where they really come from, the things they study, the reports of the so-called particles. It's more like I called it in my book 50 years ago, my first book, Inner Spaces, Parapsychological Explorations of Mind. So it's the ultimate particles would see the physicists. I'm seeing it back then, are conceptrons. They conceive of something, they think of something, they seek for it, and they find it. But of course, it's the Bible, right? Seek and you shall find.
Yes.
So much of this just interconnects, and it's hard to unpack it in a linear way. My book itself is an unusual book, not just the subject matter, but I know people don't have much attention span these days, which is a whole thing we can, also get into deeply because it affects our pulse to the consciousness and connection to each other and source. When I get into that though, it's reality. Right now, most people don't have good attention span. Arguably, they don't even have good thinking skills left. People don't think things out for themselves. So it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Can I really trust this person? Is this really the right way to go? I'm really losing their capacity. But it's possible to have like an upgrade, to have a whole different understanding of our place in reality. And my understanding is this. So everything comes from source. The evidence increasingly, like we're made to reveal science as well, historical references and different cultural references. It's very strong, that evidence base. That all comes ultimately from source. And from source, it comes into material form. So for example, when you have a dream, arguably you're the individual having the dream.
Yeah.
But once you're in the dream state, usually for many of us, the dream comes populated with perhaps other people, maybe animals or other things and environments. It's all coming out of, as we understand it, the dreamer's mind, the individual's mind. Even though it seems to have an objective existence, it's just a dream. But what I'm suggesting, coming back to what we call now our waking reality, our conventional reality, that we're living, in a sense, in somewhat of a dream. And when you learn to understand that, and then you understand how to do the dream work to navigate through the dream, not get entrapped.
Yeah.
And love, as you said, connects us. And we're right now in a very divisive state. Again, we're not trying to think, as I said, we're so distracted. So we think other people right now are competition for us, or they're hostile forces. We're totally going in the wrong direction. And here's what we really understand, both spiritually and in the more enlightened and progressive areas of science. I hope this makes sense to you because we're covering a lot here.
Let me stop you there because it's quite a lot. Let me just try to calculate it all. So what you're saying is that we are energy, just the sources, and therefore we're part of the whole. We're not separate from anything because we are energy. And its source is everything which is energy, and we are energy. We are part of source. And therefore, when it is said that we are co-creations, and even in the dream state, when we are dreaming, our consciousness we're no longer in the physical because we're sleeping or whatever.
Mhm.
We're on that level where everything exists. And therefore, if everything exists and we're now on that level, so many things, it's like being in water with everything roaming around us. It's down to us to control that which we're engaging in. And you just said when sometimes we go to the right when we should be going to the left. But the only way we can do that, because we are source, is to be aware that we are source with that power, and having that power and that energy that we can then control. Once we are aware that we are connected and one with source, what we interact with. Am I right?
Yes, and the key need is the awareness.
And
You know,
we
being
have.
aware that we are an extension of source.
That's right, because this is what it's all about. This is what the awakening is all about, is to remember who we are. We're not just this little being born from Mary and John, and this is life, and the government says that, and we have to do it that way. No, 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 no. We
But
are here experiencing what there is, but we can experience that which we want. If we realize that we're not this physical person, this human being that's governed by laws, and
mhm,
we are energy within that physical body, or some people say the physical body's in us, whichever way we have that physical body. If we are aware that we are part and parcel of source energy, and therefore we have that power, as long as we're aware, to be as we want to be and connect with what we want to connect, because we are energy.
so just to clarify and build on that. So yes, energy is a vital concept in so many different ways. I mean, go on for hours with that alone. But more fundamentally than energy, going back to source,
Mhm.
again, is the awareness of thought. For example, go back to the Bible for a moment. In the beginning, there was the word.
Mhm.
First the thought, then the
Yeah,
energy, then the
yes,
materialization.
yes,
Just to clarify from that whole
yes,
sequence. Now, to expand again on our connection to source. So I think of it like we, in this level of reality, conventional reality, on Earth, are able to send astronauts into the space station, or again, or go to the moon or other places as well. And while they are far away from the Earth, extended from the Earth, we're able to have communication with them, audio and visual.
yeah,
And so even though we're here on Earth, for example, you remember the first moonwalk,
yes, yes,
we could see it, right? So
yes,
those astronauts, in a sense, give an extension of our own awareness, our own consciousness, right?
yeah, yes, yes,
And I think we're all, in that sense, extensions again of source.
Source.
But again,
Yes.
most of us have forgotten that.
Yes.
And what is it? As you say, when you understand that, that means you then tap into and have powers to influence what we call the external material reality,
Yes.
which in my
Yes.
book and talk about is materialization.
Yes. Yeah. Beautifully said, Howard. Beautifully said, and the way
Mhm.
you've explained it. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's Jenny, how I also say, when I'm saying to people, think of a person on the moon, they can't go like this, they need a special body to be on that, because the atmosphere, and it's the
Mhm.
same with our energy, we need this body, this flesh, to be on this atmosphere on Earth. Yes. And as we're seeing the people walking on the moon, they're there, but we're here, but we're seeing it. So it's the same way we can
Yes.
do different things. Yes. Oh, yes. Oh,
But
yes.
we also, as well as being able to experience things, we also have a sense of agency. We have a power. We can make
Yes.
things happen.
Yes. Because we are energy. We're part of the source that is creation and creating everything. And everything is energy. As I keep on saying, the tables I tap here is solid, but that's because it's vibration at a dense matter that's making it solid. But if it vibrates in a
Yes,
different way, it's
but I
air.
remind you again, but I remind you correct about the role of energy, more so than what we see in the matter,
Yeah.
on the surface. But even more profoundly, more basically, repeat, it's just thought, awareness, intention.
Yes.
That's even before energy. Again, in the beginning, there was the word.
Yes. But the thought came first and then the word.
Yeah.
So what we think of, we then can materialize.
Yeah. I mean, for example, even in medicine, there's an exotic field. We put a mouthful of the word. It's called psychoneuroimmunology, which means the mind can affect through the nervous system the immune system.
Yes.
And it's true. You know, I, we can do some very strange things with demonstrating this. For example, my background too with hypnotherapy as a doctor. So one of the things that I've seen as a demonstration is when you take a sterile dropper with a patient who we know has an allergy to something on their skin. And with their cooperation, as has been done on a volunteer basis, unbeknownst to them, in terms of which drop you're going to put on the skin, whether it's the one from just a pure water or saline water, salt and water, or if it actually has the substance they're going to be allergic to or chemically sensitive to, when it's the substance that they think, not saying that it is, but they think is the one they're allergic to or sensitive to, within a minute or two, it's found. A wheel forms in the skin just from a drop of sterile water.
Yeah.
Because they think it's
Because
something very
it's mind.
yes, yes.
Their
So
mindset, I'm
yes,
allergic.
and then that's you can see it externally within minutes. And then of course within our body, the placebo effect. You get this
Placebo. Yeah.
of the body. Yeah.
The
If you
placebo.
believe it, you imagine it and believe it, then
Yeah.
you're energizing it. And then
That's
it
right.
consequences and materializes.
Yes. Yes. The placebo. If you think it is, it will. If you think it won't,
For
it
good or
won't.
bad. Yeah, and for good or bad. If someone's very fearful of having, bad side effects, side reactions,
Yes.
physical reactions, they will have
Yes.
that.
Because it is said, and I think it was in the Bible, Jesus said, you can even take poison. And if you use your mind, you can turn that poison into a non-poisonous thing. That's how powerful the mind is, the energy, and we have that, but we need to understand that and know how to use it and control it, because everything is energy and molecules put in a certain way. Everything is energy coming together in a certain way to form certain liquids or whatever. Change that energy, you change what it produces or what it
That's right.
becomes.
That's right.
So just like poison, poison is a concoction of liquids, which is energy, come together making that poison. But change that concoction of energy into something else, it no longer is poisonous.
Yeah, for example, botulism is a fatal poison secreted by bacteria. But in dilute versions, it's Botox. And people use it to make themselves look younger. That's a good example because it's a poison, a very powerful one. Oh my.
Dilute it, do something else. It's great. It's like the drugs we take, LSD, whatever you want to. If used in the proper ways it's supposed to, it heals, it's good. But if used in the way it's not supposed to, it's dangerous.
Yes.
So it's how, because there is nothing that is good or bad. It is neutral. It's how it now is being brought together to create, how I want to put it, to create an effect.
Well, in terms of it's neither good or bad, on one level that's true. But on another level, let's go, deeper and spiritually understand it. And I'll go back to our subjective experience, which we can relate to in many cases when we have dreams. Most of us would prefer to have, how should I say, pleasant dreams,
Yes.
happy dreams, harmonious dreams, most of us.
Yeah.
And I think this is a bit of a stretch, but I'm just trying to put it in meaningful, understandable words and concepts. I think similarly source ultimately refers to desire. Those are weird words to use, but so to speak, or has more of an affinity towards harmony, towards again love. The psychiatrist Arnon Buck had an experience of spontaneous mystical experience awakening many years ago, and he wrote up this book. And he said, from his understanding, that the underlying principle of the whole universe is love, because it connects everything. Nothing's more powerful than love.
Just repeat that again, please, Howard.
Now, going the other way, again, we have this great, as you know, horrible divisiveness. We've so lost our way. And again, we go to the Bible. Without vision, the people perish. And I think that's what's happening right now.
Mm.
You and I have been around a while. We've seen things being so much better. We've seen things being progressive. We've seen reason to have hope for a better future for ourselves, for our children. Not now. If we're honest, not now. So not now.
Howard, it is about us waking up to who we are. It is about us waking up and understanding who we are. It is about us believing who we are. Because again, you can wake up to that fact, but if you don't believe in it and then take the action to bring it in and to bring it out and to be that, then it's a waste. But we have the ability and the power to change the whole trajectory of this life on earth as we're living.
And quickly, it's true.
It needs a majority of us. And we can do it, but we need to wake up. And this is why I have this platform. We need to give out that word and for people to realize you're not your mind, you're not your body, and all. You are far more powerful than you realize. And it's just that we have been made to forget. And it's time we start to remember. And so people like Howard and all those guests that I brought onto my program are here to remind us of that power and source that's within us. Howard, before I say thank you and let you go, And you're going to promise me you're coming back next month. We're going to do enough. We're going to
Well,
do
I
enough.
love it next month. We're getting into creative Tony. We'll see.
But you're going to come back and you're going to talk and give us another awakening section, because it is very important. And you've broken it down so beautifully and scientifically. And I mean, I didn't know, 3-1. I knew that the PowerPoints and the sources are there, but the way you've done it, it's the brains and everything. And I will certainly be listening back to this and reading that chapter again. And I encourage people to get Howard's book, Dream It to Do It. And he's got the different chapters there that you can read and take your time over to understand it. He's broken it down very well in a way that we can understand. So please do get his book. I know it's on Amazon and you can order it from your bookstore as well. Howard, before we say goodbye, leave us with some word of wisdom to help us along our journey.
It's very important to take intentional, on purpose time outs. Not when you're exhausted, but periodically during the day, to just help you start remembering who you are, what you are, where you are, and your potential awareness of a multitude of choices going forward. So you want to be, we call it being more mindfully in the present, in the here and now. They say in my book, the now, the immediate present, is your point of power.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can experience when you're conscious, which is real at the moment. Past is gone. Future hasn't happened.
Yes.
Now is real. And in that now, you have agency. You have the power to do things or not do things, to hold back.
Mm.
And be more mindful again of being able to connect that state periodically during the day. And just feel yourself, I'm here. And that sense of agency, of choice.
Yes.
And using some forethought. What serves you in those choices? What really benefits you in the longer term? We are so short term in our thinking in the West, to our peril. The indigenous culture in North America have a concept called the law of 7 generations. And what they try to do in that concept is, if they're contemplating a major change in terms of moving their encampment, changing their hunting grounds, relationship with neighboring tribes, they would try to purposely and seriously think of the implications of the consequences of it 7 generations in the future before they made their changes. So much of the ecological destruction and harm is because, again, of this blind, short-term thinking, being totally irresponsible. Every choice has consequences. Think it out.
Yeah. Howard, thank you. You're quite right. Every choice has its consequences. And yes, we do tend to want things here and now and not think of the long term, and therefore having patience to work through that, to achieve that which we want. Howard, thank you very much indeed. And to all those who are watching this program, I know that this has opened up a chain of thought within you. And again, we're saying here is scientific evidence, but man of spirit, people of spirit have been saying a lot of these things for ages, but now Howard has been so kind to bring this scientific evidence to show you. So once again, do try and get his book, Dream It to Do It. It's there, chapter by chapter, to help you through in your quest, in your journey, connecting to spirituality and remembering who you are. So for now, Howard, thank you so much. And to all my guests here today and all people looking, bye for now. Thank you.
Be well.